Hello, my friends, and welcome to The Dose. My name is Brian McIntosh. A word tonight on risk. You know, I was sitting in my financial advisor's office today talking to him about what to do with, the income that we have and insurance options and investment options and whether or not I needed more life insurance or, the kinds of things that you talk about with financial advisors, right? And he asked me, he said, Brian, when it comes to investing, would you say that you have a high risk tolerance, a medium risk tolerance, or a low risk tolerance? And I just had to laugh and I go, dude, what do you think? And he goes, high risk tolerance, got it. And we were kind of laughing about that. Here's what I need you to know about risk. So many people today, in today's society, live in a mindset that they have to protect with ferocity what little they have. And I can completely understand that. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. Because when you think about it, the way that the world has evolved over the last couple of decades, right? We've had more and more and more, even as grown adults, we have other people looking after us. I mean, we have employers taking care of our health care, taking care of, in many cases, our child care if we have children, right? In many cases, taking care of our retirement plans if we need one of those. In many cases, taking care of our dental plans, all these things. So we've got our employers taking care of us. We have the government taking care of us. Anymore, gosh, if you don't have an employer that's willing to do all those things, the federal government will do it for you. And a lot of times, they'll do it for just about anybody, whether they've earned it, put into the system or not, So for the last couple of decades, more and more and more and more, we've had other people looking after things for us in our lives that traditionally our grandparents and their parents had to do on their own. They had to look out for on their own. So if you can rewind the clock back 200 years to when 90+% of the population was an entrepreneur, a business owner, I mean, from the local pub owner to the guy that makes the horseshoes, to the salary gent, to the blacksmith, to the ladies of the night in the old western towns. I mean, everybody was in business for themselves. And if you can hearken back to those days, everybody lived with a certain amount of risk. There was no one around them taking care of them. It was up to them. They had to create their own businesses. They had to run their own businesses, and sometimes things were thick, and sometimes things were thin. Sometimes they were fat, and sometimes not so much, Thin or flush, they were responsible. And risk was just a normal way of life. But here's what's interesting. As society has evolved, and some would argue for the better, and some would argue not so much, that's not my place to state that position here. But as society has evolved, people have become more and more and more dependent on others. And so as a result, their risk tolerance as a culture has come down, dramatically down. Now here's the danger of risk tolerance being very, very low. Because without risk, there's no reward. Without a test, there's no testimony. If there were no defense, would you celebrate a touchdown? You see, if you are risk averse to a very high degree, then you won't take any chances. If you don't take any chances, you'll never win. You'll never experience abundance. You'll never experience, a large reward for the effort, the time, the energy that you put in. Think about it. It's not hard to go get a job that requires very little responsibility and just show up 8 hours a day for 40 or 50 years. But for most people, what does that mean in terms of financial reward? And the answer is not so great. However, is it risky to, say own an NFL franchise? Yeah, Jerry Jones spent $2 billion on the new Texas Stadium. Notice it's not called Dallas Cowboys Stadium anymore. Now it's called AT&T Stadium. Makes you think he might have had a hard time paying for it, right? Had to go out and find a little help from AT&T. But what's that tell you about risk? See, Jerry Jones is a billionaire. Does he take risks because he's a billionaire, or is he a billionaire because he's been willing to take risks? They say that the average millionaire has been bankrupt 2 or 3 times in their lives. Is that because they're bankrupt because they were millionaires, or did they go bankrupt because they took risks, or did they take risks because they were bankrupt? Like, what's the correlation here? The correlation is that when you take risks, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, but you never win if you never take a risk. And even look in nature. In the ocean, coral is the most beautiful and flourishes the most on the ocean side, where you've got the waves and the predators and the storms and the boats and the shifting of tides and all of the tribulation that comes with the ocean side, is where the coral is most beautiful and abundant. On the bay side, where there's no danger, and it's not rough, and it's calm, and it's easy, and it's smooth, the coral is lifeless and dead. Some of the most amazing wines that come out of Northern California or Central California, they intentionally stress the grapes with the amount of moisture that they give them and with the amount of sunlight that they're allowed to tolerate. They'll push the grapes literally right to the edge of death before rescuing them with hydration and shade. Why? Because the risk or the added stress is what creates the abundant flavor inside of the grape. And it's that stress, that same stress, and that same risk that will bring out the abundant flavor in your life. So you've got to be willing to take a risk from time to time. Now, that doesn't mean we should be foolhardy and run around throwing ourselves in front of trains. Hey, look at me, right? That's not what I mean. What I mean is when an opportunity comes along that sounds too good to be true, maybe it is true. When an investment comes along that looks like the perfect timing, but gosh, I just don't know if I have the capital. Why not? When an opportunity comes along to partner with somebody in a business endeavor that may never come around again, take the chance. When that new home, right? To buy the new home or to not buy the new home, it's so scary. What if housing prices drop? Oh no, buy the house. Do you see? I'm talking almost purely financial here and from a business standpoint, but this can apply to all areas of your life. And the bottom line lesson here is that there is no reward without the risk. Risk equals reward. So just make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze and then go for it. Get off the wallet, get off the dime, get over the fear, and just make it happen. Get out there and take a risk. Start small if you want to, right? Order the unsweet tea instead of the sweet tea. I don't know, whatever works for you. But take a risk and begin building your risk tolerance. The most successful people in our entire world are those that are willing to take the chances others won't take. And that's the dose.